there may be additional preps that are valuable or valid to your particular situation, your skill level, your environment. When adding to that baseline, what I like to do is just add what I call supplemental kits. They're supplemental in that they supplement that baseline kit, but they're more situation dependent. They may not be something you need all the time, but it's something that you should have available if that situation applies to you. And one of the most prominent examples of that is probably the urban supplemental kit. The needs don't necessarily change from an urban to a rural environment, from the city to the woodland. They don't necessarily change, but some of the resources available do change. So I think that there are some valuable supplements that you could add if you're in an urban environment and it applies to you. So when we're talking about fire, and of course, you know, shelter and clothing choices, that really doesn't change. There's a lot of shelter in urban environments, probably more so than readily available shelter, more so than there is in the rural environments. But you know, the fuel resources are not quite the same. So I think that for an urban kit, one thing that I would want to add is some sort of stove with a fuel source, and in this case, just a can of isopropane is one. And the particular stove that I've had and been using for about, I would say 15 to 20 years now, is an MSR pocket rocket, which is just a real small, lightweight stove, really effective. Used this for well over a decade, maybe close to 2 by now, but it's still small and lightweight, packable. But because I expect in an urban environment to have not so much as far as the fuel resources that are in, I would find in the woodlands, you know, this is a good idea to pack this as a supplement to your baseline. Then moving on to hydration, one thing that is probably available, especially on these large commercial buildings, is their external water spigots. On all these commercial buildings, if you have what's called a Silcock key in your kit, then you can actually turn those on and access that freshwater resource in a commercial building in an urban environment. So a simple Silcock key is really invaluable in an urban situation. So that's one that I would recommend putting in your urban supplemental kit. And of course, in an urban environment, there's a lot more chances, I feel, when compared to a rural environment. There's a lot more chances for scavenging. So I think that some additional tools may benefit you in an urban environment that can be used for a number of things, and not just scavenging, but also for mobility. I feel like there would be a lot more obstacles that you would have to get through between chain link and wire, things like that. So having different tools that I would never think about carrying in the woodland might be a good idea for you in your situation in an urban environment. A couple of those tools, and these are kind of very similar, so I leave it up to you to decide which one you would want to choose. But you have like lineman's pliers, you know, so not only do you have the pliers, but they have some pretty robust wire cutters in there that you could snap through fences with fairly easy, and they have some pretty decent leverage depending on your grip strength. These are a little more dual purpose than the bolt cutters, but the bolt cutters, these are the smallest bolt cutters I can find, but these are, you know, you have a better mechanical advantage with these. So if your grip strength maybe isn't isn't quite as good, you might want to go with these over these. You might want to carry them both. That's up to you. You could probably cut some small locks or some hasps that the lock is on with this. If you're into scavenging, just, you know, obviously do whatever your conscience allows you to do, but those are some tools you might think about having. And another tool that I really like is kind of a mini crowbar. And this is kind of going along with the mobility and also the ability to scavenge, but, you know, to be able to pry doors, windows, what have you. Having something really small like that is something that might be valuable for you. So if I were to put together an urban kit, I would probably choose 2 or 3 of these tools to add to that kit. Another thing I'll say is in an urban environment versus the rural is, you know, depending on the state of the city you're in and what the catastrophe was, you know, there's a greater chance, I feel like there's a greater chance anyway, for a lot of things like sharp metal, a lot more hazardous dust in the air, rebar, name it. So like personal protective equipment, like just a simple pair of gloves might be a good addition. You may even go as far as to have like some eye protection, maybe even a respirator. That it really depends on what you really think is going to happen. And that probably would be a great idea to have stashed away somewhere. So if it were me and I lived in a city, which I don't, this is what I would recommend and kind of why I would recommend it. So what I encourage you to do is just take some of these recommendations, think about them, how they would apply to your situation, whether it would help you or not, and decide for yourself if this is something you want to add as a supplement to your baseline kit, depending on where you live. But like the baseline kit, keep in mind the needs that you're trying to provide for and decide, really what's different between, the woods and the city. And that should help you narrow down your list and come up with your own urban supplemental kit. But this would be my urban supplemental kit if I were to have one.